Welcome to Coach's Corner, where culture, strategy, and real talk collides. I'm Nia McConnell.
And I'm Tamer.
Evan, so good to be with
Now,
y'all.
Evan, come on, man. You've got to, Jesus Christ, brother. You've got to, if you're going to speak, you've got to speak.
Okay.
But it's not your turn to speak. My bad. This part is scripted anyway. So I'm gonna introduce. I'm saying glad to have you, Evan, and that's when you jumped in. Tells me you haven't watched a damn episode of Coach's Corner. But anyway,
I've
all
jumped
right,
around.
we gonna do it again. Welcome to Coach's Corner, where culture, strategy, and real talk collides. I'm Nia McConnell.
And I'm Tamer. We're breaking down the week's biggest plays, connecting the dots, and keeping it real.
No topic is too big, and we're sugarcoating nothing.
Because knowing the game ain't enough. You've got to know how to win it.
Let's get into it.
Let's go.
Welcome, Evan, to the Coach's Corner podcast. We're so happy to have you.
I'm so happy to be here. I've heard a lot about it, and I'm excited to talk with y'all.
Okay, let's jump into it. Today, we're talking about voting because we're in October and November elections are just around the corner. So I wanted to talk about the basics, right? Do you remember the first time that you voted for something?
Evan, I'm going to defer to you because you're way closer in age to the first time you ever voted than I am.
Yeah, wow. The first time I voted was in the 2020 election, and it was a interesting time. I had to make sure me and my mom went to early vote. My dad was working that Saturday, but he voted a little bit later in the week. It was super clear to everyone that we had to make sure that I was going to the polls, that everyone I knew was going to the polls, and we knew what was on the ballot, and it was a great experience. We got some cool voting stickers too.
Honestly, I'm embarrassed to say I'm old enough to where I can barely remember. I almost don't want to tell you exactly when it was, but I will because I'm not, whatever. I am as old as I am. It was the 92 election. Enjoy that, folks. Which was an interesting one. Bill Clinton, Ross Perot was an interesting third party entrant who actually got like 20% of the vote or something like that, which he was trending towards a bigger outcome. I remember because I was a freshman in college and I had to vote absentee, which at the time felt kind of anticlimactic for me. You know what I mean? I wanted to go. I wasn't 100% sure that my ballot had been received. Like there was no real feedback loop at the time. And to be honest with you, the lack of feedback might be part of the problem. Like getting that sticker is a big deal, right? But for a kid that's off to college that was excited to vote for the first time, kind of felt like it had a little bit of an empty feeling casting a ballot from a couple hundred miles away from my house.
That's a really good point. So, Evan, you did early voting. Is that what I heard you say?
Yeah.
And Tam had to do a provisional ballot. And I'm really happy that we're bringing those things up because they matter too. We're not always able to just go to the polls on
Mhm.
polling day. That's why we have those other avenues. I think that's really cool. But even remember voting for a class president or in elementary school when you had your first student government, or maybe that was middle school, not elementary
I
school.
remember it in elementary school.
Okay.
Yeah. And you
Yeah.
got and you got it right then and there. A friend of yours was running. It was probably only a couple dozen or a couple hundred people in the school or whatever it was, depending on where you are. And you voted and the results were read right there. And you kind of got that, you got the immediate feedback, which doesn't exist. I mean, that's one of the issues with voting, right? It feels cumbersome. It feels like it's a delayed gratification if there's any gratification at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's interesting. That's part of why we try and celebrate culture around here as much as we do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we really do become civically engaged and involved early on in school, whether we're voting for our friends or we're running for homecoming king or queen. We get the concept of voting, right? But why are there so many people who still think my vote doesn't matter? Tam, can you break down why they're getting it wrong? Like, why won't you take your ass to the poll? And here's why you should.
Well, there are a bunch of reasons why people feel their vote doesn't matter. I mean, a bunch of reasons. First of all, like we hit on something. When you were in elementary school, you felt it right then and there. You know what I mean? The count happened right then and there, and the results were happening right then and there. The broader and broader you get in terms of scope, all of a sudden you went from being one of a few dozen votes to one of several 100 million. 148 million votes were cast in 2024. Like that doesn't feel nearly as significant. The other part of it is the way the psychology behind voting and the way it's sort of marketed, so to speak, is really terrible. We hear all the time people say stuff like, vote or die. By the way, no one died when they didn't no one refused to vote and died immediately. That doesn't happen. You also hear people say like vote and things will get better. Well, also no one voted today and tomorrow they got a huge pay raise and the rent went down and their children got straight A's. That just doesn't happen. Those are unrealistic expectations. So I'm not going to say voters get it wrong. I think the way you packaged it is wrong. And I also think that the voting experience is all wrong.
Mm.
The idea that, I mean, every one of us that has cast a ballot and had gone to a polling location on election day has experienced the feeling of being in line like you're at the DMV. And that's brutalist. You know what I mean? Your head is down. You don't talk to anybody. There's nothing going on. Like you want to get in and out as fast as you can. And if the line is really long, you're in for it. And you hear these, stories left and right about that. Anyway, so the point I'm making in all that is like what we try to emphasize. And the reason we emphasize all this is for all of those reasons. We try to emphasize culture. We try and emphasize community. We try and emphasize the idea that you and I as a community are going to vote and we're going to hold one another accountable. And by the way, we're going to have a good time in the process. We'll go to, a concert. Like this is why we tether so much of what we do to fun cultural events, because we can have fun along the way. And if we're not having fun along the way, we're doing it incorrectly. Right. And the last thing I'll say is like, it doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be a chore. Great example, if you go to Puerto Rico on election day, that party that whole island is rocking. It's a party. There's caravans in the streets. It's noise. It's booze. It's fun. It's a huge, huge party all day long on election day because that's how they treat elections. By the way, those are American citizens and
Yeah.
they vote at like 90 to 95%. Like all of
Wow.
them, everybody in Puerto Rico votes. You bring those same Americans from Puerto Rico here, 15 to 20% of them vote. The environment is all messed up here. We treat it like a
Mhm.
chore. So, there's just a bunch of reasons why people feel that way and they're not wrong, but we do what we do for a reason. And hopefully we're adding some fun into that process.
Let's talk about some of the reasons why we vote. Evan, what's something big that people don't realize local elections, state level elections are impacting us on
Well,
and impacting their lives?
I think the biggest impact that you will see, the biggest change that you can experience from any level of government is directly your local officials, whether it be the tax rate that you pay, whether you're at the convenience store or at the gas pump. But you also see about, what your hometown, what your region will look like for these next 10 years. These are the plans that are being made at the local level, being implemented at the local level, directly impacting all of us. In my home state of Florida, there's a lot of stuff going on, as we know. The good things that we want to see in the future, they're happening at the local level. And I think if you really want to see the hope for a nation, you have to look to these lower level leaders who are understanding the challenges that are being faced on the federal level. And I think that's where you can get your inspiration and hopefully get more people involved in the voting process.
That was solid, Evan. What else about local elections, state level elections that people don't realize is really important?
First of all, Evan said that very well. But what I'll add to that is think about the access you have to your state legislator. You could literally call them, visit their office, talk to them tomorrow, right? And you can tell them about the problem that you've experienced at your school, your kid's school, the potholes in the street, the bad street lighting, the things that actually affect you on a daily basis, like how safe you do or don't feel in your neighborhood because of something as simple as street lighting. That delegate, that local rep can impact your immediate situation pretty quickly. It just depends on what the situation is, depends on what it's all about. But when you see those things taking place in and around where you live, it's because
Mm.
someone the president of the United States has no idea about the potholes on your street. Your United States senator doesn't know the first thing about your local elementary school either. You know what I mean? They are dealing with things on a much different level, and they're really, really, relatively speaking, impossible to access. You have direct access to your local elected officials, school board, state delegates, whomever it may be, and you can have the conversation with them, draw their attention to the things around you in your area that need attention, and then they can actually take action really quickly. It's the difference between a microwave and a slow cooker that never turns on. Like you can get it done now if you know who it is you need to speak with and you know how to approach them and you know what needs to be done. The irony of it all is all of the attention is paid to national elections. All of the attention is paid to the president or the U.S. senators or members of Congress. and very few people know who their local delegates are. So it's an inverse relationship between how much it can affect your life and how much you know about them. So if we can reverse some of that and get into our local electeds and get to know them and let them get to know us, more importantly, then that's why these local elections matter so much. They will actually impact your life, your individual life, disproportionately, hugely compared to what any senator, congressperson, or president likely will.
I think that is such a big point, especially for me and a lot of my classmates and my generation mates, because this is, the time where we're coming of age, where we're feeling empowered to make these lifelong decisions. And while it is important to know who is at the top of the ticket, especially when it comes around, a general election, I really am trying to push all my friends, all my, people I associate with in the same age group to really get to know the people who are rooted in their community and ultimately legislating what their community looks like, because we all have this shared desire to live a good life, and if we can be in cooperation with our elected officials, especially the people who live in our neighborhoods, I think it would all be a lot easier.
Well, Tam made me think about why the spotlight is on the federal level. I was sitting at my grandmother's house the other day, and that's what you see. The local news is mostly about what's happening at the top. And you get a few good pieces here and there about this city council or this, but it's not the money driver that gets eyes to the television. And so I think the way you combat that is being outside and not just watching TV or, the newspaper. People would sit down and read their newspaper and find out what was happening, who got divorced, who died. Like it was all in the newspaper. And now we just don't have that local connection through media
That's right.
that really is important.
But yeah, that's exactly right. Local reporting is going away. I mean, it's all
Local
syndicated.
reporting.
It's all yeah. It's totally it is going away. And there are some good people that are trying to sort of swim upstream against that and do some local sourcing. Like we're all journalists these days. Every single one of us has a camera and an opinion and can put our stuff out. But you're right. The local information is just not being. I mean, there's been massive, massive divestment from. When's the last time you saw or handled an actual paper, a newspaper? You know what I mean? It just doesn't happen any longer. And the last time I saw the Richmond Times Dispatch, I'm in Richmond, Virginia. The last time I saw the Richmond Times Dispatch, it had shrunk to like a quarter of the size I remember it being. So even when they do exist, it's like it's a shadow of what it used to be. You're pointing out a really interesting topic, by the way, Nia. You've identified something really interesting there.
Yeah, you made me think about it, Tam, because I'm like, why is all of the spotlight on what the president is doing when the president is not going to come out and make sure that my sidewalk is smooth so that my babies can ride their scooters
Or the
or their roller
playground is
skates?
okay or whatever. Like, and by the way,
Yeah.
let me challenge you with this, and I mean it. If you've never called your local delegate or state representative or whatever, not state rep, your local state legislator, the person responsible for your area, if you've never called them, I challenge you to do it, and you'll be shocked at how easy it is to get in touch with them, like that actual person. Then try and call your United States senator. Try and call. You're in Texas. Try calling Ted Cruz. Never mind calling
Well,
any.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Try calling
I'm gonna have
any
to have
U.S. senator.
international calling, but yeah,
You
you're
you
right.
will never reach. You will talk to 17 staffers if you talk to a live person at all. And by the way, you will never have access to that person. And if you do, it's going to be a 30-second whatever. You call your local delegate, your local school board person. You can sit down and have lunch with them tomorrow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So everybody that hasn't done that before, that has an interest in, will be shocked at how easy it is to speak with their local elected officials and how much attention they can draw to the things that actually matter to them, because so few people do it.
Yeah, that's good. Let's get to the basics about how the different ways people can vote. What's the deal with early voting? Why go early instead of just waiting until election day?
I can hop in here. I think the easiest way to talk about it is life happens, right? The whole
Mm,
point of giving yourself this cushion is to say, I know, a flat tire might pop out tomorrow. I'm gonna go get my vote in today. We have a lot of stuff happening across the world, and people are planning to be here, and you might need to be somewhere else. But when you have an extra 2 weeks, when you have an extra week to get your vote in, it's really useful.
Evan, you just healed something in me. I promise you did. Let me tell you why. I for real. One time life happened, right? And I didn't understand provisional ballots. I didn't understand mail-in ballots. I missed an important election. And I did, and it's some shame that I carry around with it. But let me tell you what happened. I relocated to a new state.
Mm,
And this was when I was in survival mode, so I needed to get out of the damn state that I was in to get to a new state to even be able to take care of my babies.
yeah.
And it was right in a big election year. And so, Evan, that really just healed me. Life happens. Get to the poll early because you never know what'll happen on
Oh my
election
God.
day.
And you just said something so important. When, we ask our people to check their registration regularly because there are a million reasons why your registration could be out of date or not synced up with where you are or who you are today, right? Did you move? And you might not even remember. So here's the thing. If the last time you voted was 2 years ago, which is very common, you might not even remember that you've moved since then because life has been ongoing. You didn't even think about it. You take for granted, yeah, I registered to vote. I had my voter registration card. Oh my God, I didn't realize I had moved. How about this? Here's a really common one. And this is gender specific, traditionally speaking. A woman that gets married that takes her husband's last name, guess what? It doesn't match the name that's on the voter file today.
Yeah.
Right? That is super, super common. So all I'm saying is we go to our people and we offer them things and entrance to a sweepstakes or whatever it is. It may sound redundant for us to ask you to keep checking your voter registration. Keep checking your voter registration status. And oh, by the way, I'm not even talking about some of the bullshit games that some, government entities run by purging voter rolls. There are a lot of places where they say, oh, well, if you didn't vote in the last 2 years, you don't deserve to remain registered, which is bull. But that could happen. You never know. Just check it. It doesn't cost you a thing.
Again, my heart is healing. Those 2 things happened to me. I moved to another state and I got married.
And by the
So
way, what
then
if your polling location changed? These
exactly.
these things happen all the time, all the
All
time.
the time, all the time. And people don't even have the knowledge. So when I got married, I didn't realize that I had to not only go to the DMV, I had to go to the Social Security office. I didn't even know that. These are things that you don't know until you're in it. That's the reason why you give yourself more time to vote.
And by the way, early voting is pretty cool. Like it's different state by state, but it's pretty easy to find out what your early voting situation is. And when you do early, like I've been taking my kids with me nonstop, and we always early vote, and we go and you early vote. You get the whole experience. You're in the booth, you're submitting the ballot, you get the sticker, the whole 9 yards. What you don't get is a long wait, you know what I mean? And oh my God, am I going to be able to make it before or after work or on my lunch break or whatever? No, you knock it out. It's the same experience. It is the reward. You get the whole feedback loop. It's great.
Do y'all know how mail-in ballots work or why we have them?
So again, it's different state to state, but mail-in ballots are fantastic, and they have been used since the beginning of the democracy, really. It dates
Mm.
all the way back to soldiers that have been deployed overseas or away from their permanent residence. So it's been something that the military has used since from time immemorial. It's incredibly secure. Is statistically like among the most secure methods of casting a ballot because it has the most important aspect, a paper trail. It is incredibly difficult and almost non-existent that anybody can fake or double vote or any of those things. It has been over the course of literally billions of ballots cast, right? In a mail-in system, the incidents of fraud are a rounding error, right? It's almost non-existent. It is almost non-existent. So voting by mail is just another way of getting it out of the way, doing it early, and it is incredibly secure. Now, I will say this. Let's be real. We all have aunties or grandparents or uncles or maybe us who back in the day, at least in my generation, would pay our bills every month by I'm driving to the electric company, I'm driving to the phone company, I'm dropping off my check because I want to make sure they got it. You're not going to tell me I didn't pay my bill. I did that when I was younger. All right. So there is a little bit in our community of distrust in the mail system. If that exists, go early vote. Right. Okay, I'm just speaking the truth. Some people don't. Some people, if you were of the generation where you drove your bills around every month,
Yeah.
go early vote or go vote. That's why there are different ways of doing it. But what I'm here to say is every one of them is incredibly secure. Every one of them, because there is a paper trail, because the systems are set up, you have to trust the elections officials that they're actually counting the votes appropriately.
I wanted to say I have a growing love for voting by mail. This most recent election, I actually voted by mail because I was abroad during the election, and it was a seamless process. I believe I used the website that gave me all the printouts, gave me my local officials' information. We even corresponded through email, so they were super helpful on that front. Voted by mail, very, very, very useful, and a lot of people in my generation have used it as
Evan,
well.
can I tell you, this is a perfect testimony to it because statistically, when you go big and broad on it, there are several states that have permanent vote by mail in place. So Oregon, Utah, Arizona, these are great examples. Colorado, the city of Denver has been modeling this for years. And by the way, what those states all have in common, exceptionally high voter turnout numbers.
Mm.
People that are able to vote by mail do so, and they love it. It is incredibly convenient, and it correlates to incredibly high voter turnout numbers relative to the rest of the country. So those states that I just listed have historically among the highest voter turnout of any state in the country. And again, no detectable significant levels of fraud, incredibly secure, the paper trail, the audit. They audit these things to within an inch of their lives. These things are incredibly so the idea of being on a vote by mail, having that as a pattern of behavior has been proven at huge scale to be an extremely effective way of increasing voter turnout. So kudos to you for figuring that out.
I also just wanted to do a quick shout out to the Postal Service. One of my parents work over there. They do good stuff.
There you go. Shout
My
out to mom
pops
and
works
dad.
over there too. Yeah, my pops work at the
There you
postal
go.
service almost my whole life, and I was like, "Oh yeah, y'all not fucking with them." So I know
Yeah,
my ballot is secure. If it's through the y'all can't play with the U.S. Postal Service. What?
for sure.
Yeah, that's good. I love that. So, what exactly is a provisional ballot, and why might someone need to use it?
So I'll jump in real quick. In general terms, a provisional ballot is one whereby, so let's say, for example, you show up at your election polling location and you did move, right? But you have ID and you can prove where you live. A lot of times what they'll do is if your name and your address doesn't match with what they have, they'll have you fill out a provisional ballot. And what the provisional ballot means, they will take it, submit it, and your vote will be counted once the data is reconciled, right? Once they can actually say, they'll just go in and prove that Tamer actually does live here, even though he lived here and blah, 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 blah. So it's essentially, and by the way, like those rules are different from place to place, but generally speaking, that's what it means. So you still go, you still vote. It's just a matter of something along the millions of different scenarios that we just described took place. And this is a way to make sure that you can still cast your ballot. It's a little bit, it's a little bit of a downer in those situations. But once again, everybody listening to this checks their voter registration status now. They'll be able to avoid that. But again, a provisional ballot is not a bad.
Excellent. If someone only remembers one thing before they show up to the poll, what should it be? And the reason why I ask this question is you have good intentions to go to the polls. You know, it you actually figured out where you're supposed to go vote. But then you get the nerves and the jitters because somehow we feel unqualified to cast our vote. Maybe we didn't know everything that's going to be on the
So
ballot.
important. What you're
You
saying
know
is
what I
so
mean?
important.
How do we encourage them to still go to the poll? What's one thing we can say to them?
You name something so important, and that is it is one of the few birthrights you have as a U.S. citizen. It's one of the few things that you are entitled to. It's one of the few things that people cannot take away from you. You know what I'm saying? Like as long as, anyway, it is
Wait,
your right.
go back and clean it up. You're right, because they can take it away from you.
Well,
So,
legally. So I was talking.
well,
So there are issues with rights restoration, people that were formerly incarcerated, and all those types of things. So I don't want to speak in total absolutes. The point I'm making is, if you're a law-abiding citizen in this country, it is 100% your right to vote. Percent. It is your right, and it doesn't matter how much or how little you think you know. No one can intimidate you out of that because you haven't, just because you don't spend every waking hour researching every single candidate. Don't let that intimidate you out of the act. And the last thing I'll say is, I give the example all the time of my in-laws. Nia, you know exactly where I'm going with this. My in-laws are in Mobile, Alabama. All right. Been married for 100 years and never mind voting. But what I know is that if you're down there on a Sunday morning at 8:30, Mary and Billy Smith are going to be dressed to the nines, leaving the house on their way to church. What do they not do? They don't check to see what the topic of the sermon is going to be that day. They don't check to see who the visiting pastor is going to be. They don't check to see what the menu for the repast is going to be afterwards. They just know that they go to church on Sundays at 9 a.m. Why? Because that's who they are. It's part of it's part of their community. It's part of how they identify. And if they don't show up, Miss Mabel and Miss whomever are going to call them, where were you today? So they have a community that's checking on them too, right? So when it comes to voting, We need to be like my in-laws, like every single election, no matter who's running, no matter what the issue is, no matter what the ballot initiative may be, it's what we do. And we need to hold each other accountable to it because I'm going to be there. Now I'll figure out the candidates. I'll figure out the issues. I'll figure out what's on the ballot. But I just know I'm going to vote. Start there. Let's make that a permanent part of who we are, permanent part of who we are as a community. Identify that way. Figure all the rest out in the appropriate time.
Yeah, I think the thing that I would want people to remember before going into their ballot box is your vote is your voice, right? And if you do not, give the rest of the world, give the rest of the country, give the rest of your community insight into what you want, insight into what your voice is to be used for, someone's going to take your position. Like Tamer said, it's one of the few things that we are entitled to as American citizens. You need to use your right. It is something that we have fought for generations. We all know this, but we're at a position where we can have the future that we deserve. And if you understand that is the power of your pen when you're doing your ballot, I think that's something that we can all hold on to.
Listen, that was inspiring. And I'm going to tell my cousins, I'm like, cuz, I know you think showing up doesn't matter. I know you think voting doesn't matter. But it's the one damn right you was born with. So I need you to show up to these polls and poke something on their screen so that they know you matter. So that was good advice. I'm gonna have to spread the word on it. This episode was meant to be informational, and even I done learned some shit. And I feel so much better. So I know the people watching this episode and seeing these clips on social media are gonna be a little bit smarter from this conversation. So
By the way,
we
there's your caption. Even I didn't learn some shit today.
even I so before we dip, let us tell you why you need to stay locked in with AAV and make sure you follow us on Instagram. This is AAV. We have some sweepstakes that you don't want to miss. The Boy Is Mine, Leon Thompson, One Music Fest, Patronata. We have an opportunity for you to have VIP tickets and free travel, free hotel. All you have to do is stay locked in with us. Go to aavsweeps.com and check out all the opportunities that we're making sure that you have a good time and that you're ready to show up to the polls. That's it for this week's episode of Coach's Corner. Appreciate y'all for tapping in. Keep the conversation going. Drop your hot take, send it to the group chat, argue in the comments. We see it all. And make sure you follow us at This Is AAV at Instagram.
And remember, and I hope we reminded you a lot today, knowing the game ain't enough. You got to know how to win.
We'll see you next week. And thank you, Evan, for joining us.
Thanks, Evan.
Thank y'all.
Peace.